welcome to Dipping In Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. I'm very fortunate today to be sitting down with the lovely Linda Kirk. Linda is the founder of the Just for Women Centre. And as I usually do, I hand over to my guest to tell us a little bit more about what they do and why they're doing it. So good afternoon, Linda.
Good afternoon, Lucy, and thank you for asking us to come along and have a little chat on your podcast today. So thank you.
You. Yeah, so yes, so just a little bit more about when did the Just for Women Centre, when did it
Yeah.
open?
I founded the Just for Women Centre. It's 14 years. We're 14 years into training. It was January 2011.
Wow.
It was based on a fact probably 6 years previously that I thought about it. I just thought that we needed a centre in Stanley in County Durham. Um, there was two reasons. One of the reasons, obviously, from my professional side, I had worked in social work for many years, and then I came out of that and I qualified as a counsellor in stress management counsellor. So it was a case of I was one of those people that probably was working in doctors and only having so many sessions with people. And of course, sometimes there was an awful lot of issues that was being presented. And I just didn't have nowhere to send them. It was a case of once the counselling sessions had finished, that was it. You were told, well, that's it, no more. So this went on for a few years, and I based the fact on right. I sold a business. I took a little bit of money out. I found an apartment, put a couple of chairs in there, went around all my old colleagues and said, look, I've opened a women's centre. If you know anybody, send them along. So that's what happened. And basically, that April in 2011, we had 75 women on our books. So I knew then I'd probably started something where I couldn't put, the lid back onto it. And of course, all these women that were coming, it was women who had gone through issues, they had mental health issues, but also one of the other reasons was that I did state that I'm a survivor of abuse, and many years ago, with my ex-husband, but unfortunately, my oldest son, it left him with trauma,
Yeah.
and so he has had mental health most of his adult life, in fact, all of his adult life, really. And he was never diagnosed properly. So he was in and out of hospital, and there was just things that wasn't right. So we've carried on for years and years until something happened about 8 years ago, and he was sectioned indefinite. So it was a case of he's institutionalized now. And this is all really down to probably what he witnessed as a child, what he shouldn't have witnessed. And so something from that made us think, if I've gone through that, there's other people gone through that. And there's other people who's caring for somebody with mental health. So they were the two reasons. It was a combination from a personal side and from a professional side. So the doors opened within April, 75 women, and that was it. We just sort of like went with it. I only had the rent and everything for 1 year. I didn't know anything about social enterprises, or I wasn't going to set it up as a charity. I knew I wanted to set it up as something like a social enterprise. So I did.
Yeah.
And well, pretty much in the first year, we're just in hand to mouth, really. And then the business side kicks in. And it's a case of all of these women were coming, and I believe in craft and therapy. I used to do it with the young people in K. And I'm a big, I think that anything to do where you're using your hands and your mind, it helps you. So we had lots and lots of all these products, some beautiful products. And I thought, let's take them to market. Let's get the second year's rent. So we
Yeah.
started selling the products to gain the rent for our second year. Um, Unfortunately, there is a bit of a tail to the premises that I was in, but it wasn't suitable, should I say, as a women's centre.
Okay.
So we got onto the high street, and a councillor actually paid for a year's rent for us to rent a shop up on the high street. So that was 2012 taken care of. So that was how we were. We were hand to mouth, just, trying to raise bits of money, selling our goods. We had this little shop where we're selling all our crafty goods. And it was a case of that was it for the first few years. Obviously, it happened with the Jimmy Savile. This is when things took a turn.
Yeah.
I had one counsellor who used to work alongside us, who'd been with us since I'd started, and I had a couple of volunteers. And of course, women were coming out of the woodwork and
Mm.
telling us these tales of historic abuse. So it was a case of, well, where do we send these women? So we had pretty much, I'd already worked with historic abuse, and so had one of my volunteers. So we literally, started thinking, right, let's skill ourselves up again. Let's get other people on side. So we got a few more counsellors in, and we started working with the trauma of what these people had gone through. Many years on, as we rolled on, many more people were coming to the centre. It was getting to where the first year, I think we worked with like 200 women. The third year, it was 350. Each year, I was gradually seeing 100 to 200. And then by the third and fourth year, we were in literally, 8 and 900. And it was a case of we were working with young people as well. We had young girls that were coming to the centre from the schools, or the parents were bringing them. And then Debbie, who works alongside us, she said, could we not have a men's group? We were asked to run a men's group. And we thought, well, it is, the ethos is the women's centre. But
Yeah.
obviously, if we had somewhere we could work with these men, which we did, a next door building. So Debbie started working with the men from 2016. So pretty much this is how we've gone. We've sort of like had many challenges. We've had things like, where we're going to be closing the doors because there was no money there. And then all of a sudden a little pot of funding would come from somewhere. This is how we worked pretty much up till about 2017. And then what happened was the landlord wanted our building. So we had nowhere to go. The council stepped in and said that they would get us a building. And in 2018, they bought the building that we're in now. And we've just gone from strength to strength. COVID hit,
Yeah.
and we didn't close our doors. We literally stayed open. Me and Debbie made a decision. We went home on a night time, but we weren't at home. We stayed within these premises every day, 5 days a week. We got ourselves, not only we had our phone, but we had handhelds as well, mobiles. And we made like a little bit of a helpline. Then we decided to put out gift sets to people, to the elderly, because it was so worrying for them, because people were dying. Up here, we have a care home that was just across the road, and that was the first care home to go national on TV, where people were literally just dying each week. So it was very frightening up in this area at the time. So we decided to make all these little baskets and get them out. 10,000 baskets later, because that's what we did. We were only going to do 200. Uh, but we didn't. We got 10,000, and we put them out all of that year. So that year, through the worst parts of COVID, we got these little baskets out to the doors, with chocolates and a little present and a little book and things like that. So yeah, that just turned us from strength to strength. And then of course after COVID, well, we've got 18 counsellors now. Um, Debbie is my deputy. She's my deputy manager. I made her deputy. We've got a fantastic little tea room where we have staff who's employed from the local community. We have a little manufacturing where we make sell our crafty things, and we sell them in the shop. So that's all. The ethos of the centre is still there. We're
Yeah.
still small as we see it, but what we do is absolutely massive. So that's about the story of the backstory of it, but the work that we do is just it's unbelievable.
That is amazing. And I love anything that has that really positive starting off with nothing. Like you say, you didn't have massive amounts of funding. It was literally hand to mouth to get to the next year. And that's when you know that you're doing the right thing, when you're not quite sure what's going to happen next, but you just keep going forward because your gut tells you this is the right thing to do and I know it's going to work. And I think what you've done is just create such an incredible environment, safe space. It's obviously clearly gone from strength to strength. And
Awesome.
and to have something that's, to me, it's so important because especially when we talk about domestic abuse, and in particular that aspect of life that many people experience, is very often it is hard to talk to family and friends. It's very hard to open up to people, as we know, because very often you're isolated from your family and friends. And so to have somewhere where you can go and talk to people who potentially have, I always say that it's never the same experience when it comes to domestic abuse. Everybody's experience might have a similar thread running through it, but it's unique to that person because it's unique how they've experienced it, unique how they react to it, how they potentially and hopefully move forward from it. but to know that you can go somewhere where there's counsellors, where there's people that can at least, you know, listen to you, because very often you don't know the answer yourself, do you? But you just want someone to listen and believe you know what you're saying, because very often it's some of the things that people will say, and victims and survivors say, you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you. But I suppose, you know, if we look at it and say, well, actually, we're not going to judge, we're just going to sit back and say, you talk about it, you get your story out there, you have your voice. And I just think it's so important to have places like the Just for Women Centre where it is that safe space, and to keep going after COVID, after so many, you know, businesses have experienced so many problems, and just to be able to keep going, to me, is phenomenal. I think it's amazing. It's absolutely
No,
amazing.
I've got a good team behind us, an absolute fantastic team, and that's really what's kept this centre going. I couldn't have done it single-handed. And the team, obviously, over the years, you know, we've getting more and more people. All the counsellors have trained with us, and then we've seen them go and get the degrees, which has absolutely been fantastic. Then they come back with us to be freelancers. So yeah, there's a challenge to me because obviously I have to find that funding to pay them. But at the end of the day, it's the work they do, absolutely fantastic. And you're right, it is about that safe space. That is what was needed, more important than anything.
Yeah.
Um, when you've been through something like that, or you're actually going through it, you don't know where to turn. You know, some people don't want to speak. I was like that. I didn't want to tell my family what I was going through. And sometimes having a stranger just ask how you are. You know, I can remember breaking down one day, crying my eyes out because I'd gone through something and I'd run out the house type of thing. And just somebody sitting on a bus. I was sitting on in a bus stop because I had nowhere else to go. I didn't know where to go. And somebody just said, are you all right? No, I'm not all right. And that person giving you a little bit of advice, knowing in your mind, yes, this is wrong what I'm going through. This is totally wrong. So I think it's them sort of moments, what we can have in here. Women can come together. We might have some women that's a little bit shyer than others. Other women listen to the other women. We've got some women that, you know, they'll speak their mind and they'll say things and they'll learn from each other. And you're right, Lucy, everybody's is the same, similar stories, but it's unique to them
Yeah,
and how people process what they do.
absolutely.
So the centre isn't about, you know, getting people away from the, you know, from the perpetrators or anything. In most cases, they're already have gone or they're leaving
Yeah.
anyway. But yes, we do work with women that are still going through it. And every day they'll come, and that's why crafting's so good,
Yeah.
because they'll come, they'll do a little bit of craft and they'll make themselves something pretty and they take it home. We don't know what they're going home to sometimes, but we'll tell them to do little safety plans.
Yes.
So, you know, just to keep themselves safe. So that's what it's about. There was nothing like this, unfortunately, in the 80s when I needed something like this. So probably keeping that thought in my mind over the years, seeing the devastation of what I've seen my son go through, seeing other people, you know, within the communities, and I've just thought it was a no-brainer. We have to have something, and here we are. So,
It's
but
just
yes, it's a lonely place, isn't it? Abuse is a very lonely place.
that I was just going to say, you've touched on so many points there, I couldn't agree more. It is one of the loneliest places to be, and you know, when you are in your own head and you are trying to think things through, you know, you're not thinking clearly, because if you are still in that situation, you have the perpetrator still controlling, still manipulating, and so you can't think clearly for yourself. So having somewhere like the centre where you can go and you can have a bit of respite and you can have a moment to try and, you know, rationalize and think logically about things, it is incredible. And something that you said earlier on that really resonated with me was this idea that, you know, and it's amazing that we have all these counsellors. It's amazing that, you know, you get your support and you get your 6 weeks or whatever the length of time is for the sessions, but you're 100% right. And one of the main reasons I started the podcast and my website was, what happens then? You
Mhm.
know, it's not the end, the story, not close the book,
No.
that's it, we're done. That's actually more often than not where you've opened Pandora's box. You've started to talk about all these things. You're starting to process things, and then the counselling ends, you know, and what do you do then? And I think it's so important that people know that there are places like the Just Women Centre where you can keep going back, and having that support and knowing that it's there, and knowing that it doesn't have to be that it's a time limit. It's very sad, obviously, there is funding issues. We know that, don't we? And we know that it will always be a case of how long you can support somebody for. But to know that it isn't going to have that kind of expiration date, because domestic abuse doesn't have an expiration date. Your process of moving forward after abuse doesn't have an expiration date. So, we need to remember that, don't we? That people have that need and that want for support. And it should be
It's like
accessible.
today, we've
Yeah.
actually got, as we're speaking now, we've got an aftercare session going on,
Yeah.
and there's women in there now. Absolutely, they're coming for 4 hours
Wow.
and on a Wednesday, and it's all about that aftercare. It's all about what they've been through and where they're going and how they're going to move forward.
Yeah.
And it is about that. It's not just, somebody leaving somebody and
Yeah.
getting away from it. It just doesn't, because it's all what happens. You have to process all these thoughts.
Yeah.
You have to move on with your life, but it's a way of moving on as well. And this is where we can help here
Yeah.
to help women to get the tools that they need to be able to move on with.
Absolutely. And I think, especially, and I always say that it's never talked about enough, is post-separation abuse, when, so much in society will say, well, that's it now, you're no longer in that situation. And I must say this in nearly every episode I do. And it's not that simple. It's not that straightforward. And if children are involved, as you've said with your son, many, many times there are children involved. And the perpetrator does not want to lose power and control. So the children, even though they're not living in that situation, there's still things going on the outside that are affecting them, affecting the victim survivor themselves, and it's how they can, like you say, try and keep themselves safe, try and look for support, try and find out information that can keep them safe and on a daily basis, because that's the challenge, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not that straightforward. And I think that's where society really struggles to understand domestic abuse. And I feel like almost there should be a campaign saying, if you think you understand domestic abuse, think again, because it's so much more
a
complicated.
minefield.
It
It's an
is. It
absolute minefield. Yeah.
absolutely is.
And it's just what you've touched on there as well about the perpetrators. Yeah, they've still got the rights and everything like that. And yeah, that's fair enough if they haven't, in a way they're saying, well, we're not harming the children, but they've harmed the mother. But I still have that defense of saying, well, yeah, but they've seen that mother being harmed, which is totally wrong anyway.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, it's rights and responsibilities. As a mother, we've got rights and responsibilities to keep our children safe. This is why most of the time we'll leave the perpetrators, we get away from them so that we can have a safe life for our children. Yet the perpetrators can still go on to perpetrate. There's
Yeah.
no rights or responsibilities there. And you're right with society. That's where there needs to be more education.
Yeah.
We need to get out there and, educate young people. But not only that, educating adults as well
Yeah.
about the rights and wrongs. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things that you never really see in all the campaigns. I mean, today the reason I've spoke about that is because Tracy Babin's got a fantastic campaign going, and it's a just don't campaign, and it's all lads that's on this, and it's so powerful. It's on this short video. We are going to get a link for it, so I'll be
Oh,
able to
wow.
send that over to you.
Yeah, please, I'll get it on the
um
website.
but it's so strong because it's from the male point of view,
Yeah.
the jack the lads who think they're this, and then you get the other side of this video. We need more of that. We need it out in media,
Yeah.
constantly in the media. Instead of the
Absolutely.
victim blaming, we need the perpetrators to be blamed.
Do you know, I've just done something recently talking about that, with the blame and the shame, and that's something that keeps coming back again and again and again, is why are we always placing the blame and the shame on the victim? It's because we blame the victim. We say, well, you chose to be with that person, you had children with them, you married them, you live with them. It's always putting it back on the individual. But what nobody ever says is, the person that is the victim or survivor, had emotions, had feelings that they genuinely felt for that individual. They didn't know they were being love bombed. They didn't know they were being trauma bonded. They went in thinking that they were being cared for, loved, protected, all of that, which we know now is possession by a perpetrator. But how society has this impression that, you know, it's that person's fault, when society, we all have emotions, we all have feelings, and nobody is immune to a perpetrator. That's why I always find really difficult is when somebody says, oh, I'd have seen them coming a mile off. How do you know?
How
How
do
do you
you
know
know?
you're not married to a perpetrator? How do you know you're not dating a perpetrator? Because you know. But how do you know? You don't, do you? And that's the
Yeah.
thing, because that person could be in a situation of, oh, well, this is normal to me. Yes, but that person is behaving in such a way that would be considered to be abusive. But people don't want to see it. So that's what I always find really interesting, is when there's that very much that blame, that shame. And it doesn't, you're 100% right. It needs to be more out in the media. It needs to be talked about more. It's not a dirty secret. I always say that. It's not, it doesn't just affect a certain demographic. It can happen to anybody. And when people say, well, it doesn't affect me, I've never experienced it. Okay, but you have neighbours, you have family, you have friends, you have work colleagues. And if you look at that as a whole, there will be somebody in your life that has experienced abuse. So it has impacted you, whether you realise it or not. It has been part of your life. And if you knew more and you did better, you might be able to help that person. And that's where we need to kind of get past that idea that it's only certain people's problems, because it's not. It's every, and you're right, adults very much so need educating. And, you know, this, I did an episode last year with Carrie Bauer, who's from Age UK. And, you know, again, people who've been in relationships 40, 50 years, and to them, that's normal, the way they've been treated. And society has changed, some for the good, some for the bad. And things have changed a lot over the years. But what hasn't kind of changed is that core aspect of domestic abuse, which is power and control. That hasn't changed. Domestic abuse may have evolved in terms of, you know, stalking and harassment now can be not just an in-person thing, it can be used with technology, etc. But the gut kind of the center of abuse is that power and control. And until we can, you know, sort of help people recognize that and see that that's what it's about, then, you know, we've still got a long way to go, haven't we?
Oh, an awful long way to go. I mean, we've got social media and the internet and everything now, so it's coming. There's a storm coming from another place now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's a case of, I mean, for the work that we do, we're just touching the iceberg, but we're looking all the times. We're looking at new ways to be able to help people. Um, I do an awful lot of research. Sitting on a night time. I'm usually sitting on a night time if there's nothing good on the TV. I'll do a little bit of research. And sometimes some places have got it so right. And that's the problem. I mean, that's one of the issues what we've been talking about today with Kim and Tracy. And it was a case of how can we stop this? How can we get reform to stop this? And it is a lot about the education, and the media could help. The media, I mean, they put some fantastic, films out there now. I mean, when COVID was on, there was a lot about domestic abuse, and
Yeah.
I know there's a one under the minute about a cat, isn't the way the cat gets looked after, and but there needs to be more. There needs to be more about the person who actually initiates the abuse,
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
it from that angle.
From that lens,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
that's a line that maybe needs to be looked at, and hopefully politicians, if they hear podcasts and things like this, Lucy, hopefully somebody just might think to themselves, there's got to be something here that women like ourselves who set these things up for a cause,
Yeah.
we must be doing something. So maybe look, get a collective together. That's what I've always said. Get a collective people together, and just brainstorm and think, well, let's do something, and I'm doing my little bit up here in County Durham. And we'll keep it on as long as I can, as long as these doors can stay open, we'll be here for all those people that need us. But yeah, it is something that needs to be talked about. It is hidden. And as for people who haven't gone through it, and yes, they may know somebody or something, or they may not. They may be speaking to the person they are working with, and that person just does not want to open up. And it's no reflection on them. It's
No.
just that some people, you become sometimes I used to think was you become as devious as the perpetrator sometimes because you start keeping things to yourself. So,
Yeah.
for instance, when things was going bad with me, my mum was noticing a change in us. What's wrong or nothing? And I would make up something else to deflect from what was really happening.
Yeah.
So when I look back on that, you do. I mean, I'll talk about it in our workshops, and some of the tales that some of the women will come out and say, "Oh yeah, I've done that one." Do you know what I mean? And it's not that you want to lie, you don't want to be a deviant, but you've got to be for survival. It's a
Yeah.
survival technique. And
Yeah.
you think, especially when you're getting intimidated as well, because
Mm.
it doesn't just happen overnight. I
No.
mean, in some cases it could. With mine, it didn't. I went on and I was having children, but I knew pretty much halfway through I knew what was right from wrong.
Mm.
But then you're married,
Yeah.
you've got a life,
Yeah.
you on the outside, everything's looking rosy to everybody else. When do you stop being that and saying to people, well, actually, he's doing such and such to me, and this is the life I've got with him?
Yeah.
It did happen like that, but it took time.
Yeah.
Not a lot of years. I wouldn't say I was a lot of years there, but it did take time. And by God, when it did come out, mind, I just never, that was it. That was me full
Yeah.
on throttle. But there was nobody to help to pick us up. I mean, yeah, my family was there, but they really didn't understand it
No.
because I'd never witnessed that with
No.
my mum and dad. So it is. It's a lot about educating other people, but also educating the people that are mostly there that are doing these horrible things to people.
Absolutely. And very often as well, I some over the years, I've thought to myself more and more about the characteristics. I mean, we talk about the characteristics of a perpetrator, the charm, that whole charm offensive, that whole, demeanor where they're being very protective, but actually it's just you're a possession. And I think very often what doesn't get discussed enough to me again is the people I've worked with and the people I've known who have been victims or survivors or whatever they want to call themselves are the most loyal people. And I think that's something sometimes where when we talk about, well, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they see this? Why didn't they see that? Because deep down, a victim or a survivor is usually a very loyal person, a very empathetic person. So they're always trying to do the right thing, do the best. And very often they think that doing the right thing or the best thing is to stay in that situation and try and work through it, and it's only when they unlock that potential, if they are for, and I'll always say if they're fortunate enough to leave, because we know it's not the same for everybody. But when they unlock that potential, and so many people who've experienced abuse go on to do some incredible things. And like yourself, you go on and you change the world. And it might be that little bit of your world, but it's changing. And it's those, if everybody did that little bit, if everybody who'd experienced abuse felt that potential to go and do, and not everybody wants to, but it just to me is that's where the power lies, is with those individuals who have experienced it and then can say, actually, I know what we need to do, and not blame themselves and give themselves compassion. That word's come up this week a few times. Somebody else had said acceptance,
Yeah.
it's about being gentle with yourself and not but you've had enough pressure put on you. That's what I always think. You've had enough, it's like a pressure cooker you've been living in. You now need to take the lid off and go, actually, I need to just take my time. And then that's the power, isn't it? That's the control taking back, taking that time to come to places like the Just for Women Centre. That could be for those women, that one little bit of the week for them, or however many times they come in a week to attend workshops, to do all they do, to do the crafts. That's them taking that power and control back. And to the rest of the world, it might seem like, all right, so they just do, but actually it's so much more, isn't it? It's
Oh,
so
definitely.
powerful. Yeah.
Definitely it is. I mean, as I said, I'm sort of over what it's many years ago. My life has totally changed from that. And that's one of the things that we do. We can change. We can change our perspective. We can change our lives.
Yeah.
And it's a case of a lot of the women who come here, sometimes, they've said, well, I've just, had him wrapped around us and I haven't been able to do anything and, education and everything like that. So we'll find out what other skills they've got.
Yeah.
And it's a case of women have got many skills out there that they don't even realize. And so for some, we've got people who started little businesses. We've got people now that's gone into work. We've got some women that volunteer in other organisations,
Wow.
that they train with us and then we lose them. But that's great because they're spreading their wings. And it's a case, we've had women who's gone on to married fantastic people. We've even seen, witnessed all that. So it's a case of your life can change. For
Yeah.
those people who are at the midst of it and they're in there now and they're thinking, where can I go? What can I do?
Yeah.
It's okay, us women sitting here and
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
When you have been there and you think to yourself, there's no way to go. But little steps, it just takes little steps and
Yeah.
a belief in yourself. And that's what I would say. Always have a belief in yourself and think, I will get out of this. I won't be tortured the rest of my life. You can torture yourself, but you're not going to be torturing me. And then you take a plan of action. And I think that's basically, the
Yeah.
sort of things that we may have to get out there.
Yeah.
We can't just tell people. I mean, in some cases, some women feel, financially,
Mm.
it is a case of, well, what do I do? But nowadays, there is things like, I mean, there's refuges all over now.
Yeah.
These
Absolutely. Yeah.
refuges are popping up all over the place. So there's safe places to go to,
Yeah.
with your children on your own. So there is things out there that you can connect, and there's some fantastic big organisations that you can ring, Women's Age, domestic abuse centres and things like that. So that there is things out there that's a bit different to how it used to be. So
Yeah.
I would say if you're sitting in silence, just pick that phone up or just speak to somebody. Just let it go. Just let that secret go. And when that secret comes out, that's it. That's it. That's you on the start to your recovery. And that's how we do it in our workshops and here. We
Do you know
just say,
what?
well,
I often try when I've done an episode, I think so I've started doing these snippets, and the snippets are the bits that goes out, and then people can go and watch the whole thing. And that right there is the snippet, is the letting go, let the secret. I love that. That's so true. And if you let it go, it can seem so daunting. And again, it is something I will often say is it's no one's saying it's easy to pick up the phone. No one's saying it's easy to speak to somebody. But when you do, and when you let that go and you actually are almost admitting it to yourself, it might be the first time you've admitted it to yourself that this is the situation. And for many people, because abuse is and domestic abuse is viewed as a certain type of thing, if you like, that they think, well, is it abuse or isn't it? I've had people say, well, they've never hit me, so it can't be domestic abuse. Well, actually, it still can because of coercive control, because of, and we go on and on. But letting it go and just accepting and admitting it to yourself, that's the bravest step for me. But once you've done that, you just wish you could bottle it, couldn't you, and say to people, then you're just going to fly. And it might be hard, and it'll be like this, and it isn't going to be plain sailing by any means. But once you have that support, once you believe in yourself, once you realize that you're never going to let anybody control you ever again, tell you what to do, you are your own person, it's incredible, isn't it?
it is. It's a
Yeah.
good feeling. I suppose for me, it took a few years. It didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
I was one of those that he wouldn't leave us alone for a few years,
Yeah. It
certain
won't be
things
plain
were going
sailing.
on.
It won't be
Yeah,
straightforward at
it
all.
wasn't. And I look back on that and I think, well, could I have done things different? Well, in hindsight, maybes, but you continued with the battle. No, no, no. That's all I can remember saying. No,
Yes.
you're not doing this.
Yeah.
You're not getting
Boundaries.
away with that.
Yeah.
And the arguments that would inflame. And that's the thing. It's about keeping strong.
Yeah.
You have to keep strong. And I do see a lot of women who work in different ways. We all have different ways of going on. And
Yeah.
I was probably one of them people. I didn't have much of a voice when I was younger. I could speak up for myself and I could say, but I was one of those empathic people. I used to always think, the say you had 6 or 9 months, or even up to a year of absolute pure bliss.
Mm.
You thought, this is it. This is it. We've got it right now. That was a blip in him. That was just something, a bit of jealousy or whatever. And then all of a sudden, for no reason,
Back
something
round
else,
again.
it would be back. And you'd think, where on earth is all? and you'd go back into the same feelings as what you had that year before. I want to get out of this. I just want somebody to take him away from me, just somebody to get him away from me and these kids. And you'd be back into what, and then it would start all over again, the sorries and the flowers and God knows what else you'd be told. And it was a case of, right, well, we'll go another year or
Yeah.
another
And it
6 months, or
dampens
you
you
might
down.
get another, just
Yeah.
another month, you know.
Yeah, but
It
each
was,
time it happens, it dampens your spirit that little bit
yeah,
more, doesn't it? And that's, you're right, that's where you then have to be strong when you do make that decision, or you do think to yourself, I need to speak to somebody, or it is that strength that will carry you through, and the strength of those around you who can support you. You know, you're so right. It is so true. And it won't be straightforward and it won't be easy, but if you sustain that belief in yourself, and if you continue to get that support, and there will be days where, I think I wrote a blog a while ago saying there's days where you're going to feel like you're on top of the world, and there's going to be days where you feel like you're back to square one. But if you just keep believing in yourself and saying, and if you know that what you're doing is for the right reasons, and if you know that your intentions, you know, if it's to do with your children, whatever it may be in terms of post-separation abuse, then you know that you're doing it for the right reasons, then you will stick to it, and you won't back down, and you won't falter. You will keep going and going and going. And you will need rests, and you will need time, and there will be days where you're exhausted, and that's fine. I will always say that. I used to work with people and say, okay, so you didn't do much today, so what? You got up, you came to this group, you got out of
yeah,
bed, you had your breakfast, you came to the group. There, to me, that's a success, because maybe
that's
it was
right.
just something you needed from that group at that moment that could have made all the difference, that could be the thing that unlocks everything and changes everything. So never think that a bad day is a wasted day, because it's not.
No,
Yeah.
no, totally. And there's only one way up, as I say, when you're going through that hard time, um, for the 20th or the 30th time, whatever. It's a case of each time he's chipping away. And that chipping away is really, in a way, you don't realize it, but that is what's getting you to the goal of actually thinking something's got to give here.
Yeah.
Something has to give. This kind of keep going on.
Mm.
And for some people, they may walk away straight away.
Yeah.
But for others, it could go on for a lot of years. We've got a lady in here who's 82-year-old. 82-year-old. She went through 50 odd years of what she went through. And she's come to tell us her story. And it's absolutely unbelievable. And what she said was, I want them young ones to hear my story,
Wow.
to learn that they don't want to be going on for 50 odd years because it was a cultural thing, because of the way that the family was and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can learn from each other as well. We can learn from each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've just got to spread this word, Lucy, spread
Oh,
this word out and
I,
help those that's out there going
definitely.
through now where we're speaking.
Well,
So
that's
there'll be
exactly
there'll
it.
be
In these
people there.
moments, yeah, in these moments, and that if all you hear is, all I ever intended to do from the start of this was, the word that always came back to me was hope. Just give a little bit of hope. And some days it may not be that you have the answer. It may not be that everything, you know, you feel like it's all going to work out in the end. But if you have that little glimmer of hope, then the perpetrator hasn't won, because with that little bit of hope, it grows and grows and grows over time. So just, you know, keep having hope, keep having that belief that things can change, and your life can be so much better than you could ever have imagined. And I just think it's amazing. And one day I want to come to the Just
Oh,
for Women
definitely,
Centre,
definitely, definitely.
pop in and say
But
hi. I'm only in
yes,
Manchester, we're not far.
I'm coming down to Manchester. Well, I'm coming down to
Oh,
Rochdale
oh,
next month. I'm visiting a centre down in Rochdale next
oh, well,
month.
let me know.
So
Meet in
yeah,
Manchester for a brew.
but but no, it's been great having this conversation. Hopefully, we'll have more.
Yeah,
We'll be able to do some more, hopefully, and
yeah,
find out about some other stuff that we're maybe getting into and
yeah.
how we're going to be pushing the boundaries. That's the way I look at it.
Oh,
I think just
absolutely.
think outside the box, push some boundaries out there, and whatever challenges come, let's go with it.
Well, you've faced them all so far, and you're still going strong. And I think that's incredible. And as I say, obviously on the website, there's the link for the Just for Women Centre. And then if you've got the link for the video at some point that's just been done, I can pop that on there.
Oh,
So
that's brilliant.
if
Great.
anybody wants to see and anybody is in the Durham area, then they can go and find out more
Right.
information.
Well, this
But
will be getting spread far and wide, believe me.
thank you, thank you. That's wonderful. That's it. That's the dream. Oh, Linda,
No,
thank you
definitely.
so, so much.
No, it's been lovely.
Thank
It's been a lovely conversation. I mean, I know we're talking about what we're talking about, but at the same time, it's a conversation that needs to be talked about
you.
in the more, I would say, just a common sense
Like
way,
this.
sitting, yeah, and
Yeah.
just chatting about it.
It shouldn't be intimidating. It shouldn't be
Oh,
scary. And my belief from the start was that it should be, if you're listening or you're watching, that you're just sitting here with us and you're part of
yes.
the conversation. It shouldn't be that we, might be professionals, might, it might seem that we know more than everybody else, but actually, if you've been through it, you have your own experience and you have your own level of knowledge that you don't even realize at the moment. So it should just be a conversation that anyone can be part of. So thank you.
No, no,
Thank you
and
so
thank you for
much.
today. Thank
And
you
I'll
now.
see you soon.
Yes, definitely. Right.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care.
Where